ostende nobis Domine misericordiam Tuam. Domine exaudi orationem meam. Dominus vobiscum. Oremus. Exaudi nos Domine Sancte Pater omnipotens aeterni Deus, et mittere digneris sanctum angelum tuum de celis, qui custodiat, foveat, protegat, visitet atque defendat omnes habitantes in hoc habitaculo, per Christum Dominum nostrum.
Confite, Deo omnipotente, et vobis fratres, quia peccavinis cogitatione, verbo, opere et omissione, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, ideo precordiatum Mariam Santa Virgine, omnes angelos et sanctos, et vos fratres, orare pro me, ad Dominum Deum nostrum. Miseriatur nostri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis peccatis nostris producat nos ad vitam aeternam.
omnipotens sempiterne Deus, qui celestia simule terrena moderarius, supplicationes populi tui clementer exaudi, et pacem tuam nostris concede temporibus, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium tuum, qui tecum vivit et regnat in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus, per omnia saecula saeculorum.
A reading from the prophet Isaiah. About Zion I will not be silent. About Jerusalem I will not grow weary, until her integrity shines out like the dawn, and her salvation flames like a torch. The nations then will see your integrity, all the kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name, one which the mouth of the Lord will confer. You are to be a crown of splendor in the hand of the Lord, a princely diadem in the hand of your God. No longer are you to be named forsaken, nor your land abandoned, but you shall be called my delight, and your land the wedded. For the Lord takes delight in you, and your land will have its wedding. Like a young man marrying a virgin, so will the one who built you wed you. And as the bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so will your God rejoice in you. The word of the Lord.
Thanks.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. There is a variety of gifts, but always the same Spirit. There are all sorts of service to be done, but always to the same Lord. Working in all sorts of different ways in different people, it is the same God who is working in all of them. The particular way in which the Spirit is given to each person is for a good purpose. One may have the gift of preaching with wisdom given him by the Spirit. Another may have the gift of preaching instruction given him by the same Spirit. And another the gift of faith given by the same Spirit. Another again the gift of healing through this one Spirit. One the power of miracles, another prophecy, another the gift of recognizing spirits, another the gift of tongues, and another the ability to interpret them. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, who distributes different gifts to different people, just as he chooses. The word of the Lord.
Dominus vobiscum. Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Ioannem. There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. The mother of Jesus was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited. When they ran out of wine, since the wine provided for the wedding was all finished, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said, "Woman, why turn to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." There were 6 stone water jars standing there, meant for the ablutions that are customary among the Jews. Each could hold 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them to the brim. "Draw some out now," he told them, "and take it to the steward." They did this. The steward tasted the water, and it had turned into wine. Having no idea where it came from, only the servants who had drawn the water knew. The steward called the bridegroom and said, "People generally serve the best wine first and keep the cheaper sort till the guests have had plenty to drink. But you have kept the best wine till now." This was the first of the signs given by Jesus. It was given at Cana in Galilee. He let his glory be seen, and his disciples believed in him. Verbum Domini.
We have a couple of notices today. The gift aid scheme lets us claim back tax already paid on the money that you give us at no cost to you. And we missed out on claiming up to £18,000 last year on both cash and contactless donations. There are forms available at the back of church that tell you how you can help us to claim back this money at no extra cost to you. So please take one home and have a look and return it to us if you can. Oratory Young Adults meets this Friday evening from 7:30 p.m. in the Parish Centre to deal with the question, how do I hear the voice of God? Much ink has been spilled over the years trying to make sense of the exchange between Christ and his mother that we've just heard. The mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said, "Woman, why turn to me? My hour has not come yet." And in fact, this translation has even tried to tidy it up a bit to make it more polite. Why turn to me? That's not actually what our Lord said, but literally, what is it to me and to you? Which is a Hebrew idiom meaning something along the lines of, what have you got to do with me? What do we have in common? Or in other words, leave me alone and mind your own business. And that's clearly going to cause problems for many readers, because it doesn't seem particularly polite. And there's no clever way round this. It isn't. But of course, we mustn't take that too far either. Christ doesn't reject his mother in the way that some more extreme Protestants might claim. He isn't insulting her needlessly, and he certainly isn't doing anything sinful. St. Augustine observed on this passage, he said, "Did he come to the marriage for the purpose of teaching men to treat their mothers with contempt? Had Jesus then come to the marriage in order to dishonor his mother, when marriages are celebrated and wives married with a view to having children, whom God commands to honor their parents?" And so clearly the answer to all of St. Augustine's questions is no, of course not. That's not what Christ was trying to do. And so it seems that Christ is actually saying something more along the lines of, don't bother me, because it's not time for me to work any miracles yet. And then he works a miracle, his first. Which causes us problem number 2 in this exchange. If what Christ says is really the flat-out refusal it appears to be, why does this miracle take place? And that's when we might go back and try to retranslate that strange expression in some other way, to read some other meaning into it that, to be honest, it just doesn't have. We seem to have a problem. Our Lady asks her son to perform a miracle, he says no, and then he does it anyway. Is he lying? Or is he just pretending that he's not going to work a miracle so as not to draw attention to himself? Or is it something else completely? And people have come up with very many different and complex answers, but as so often in life, the simplest answer makes the most sense. And the simplest explanation is this: our Lord changes his mind. He thinks that it's not yet time to reveal himself. He learns from his mother that actually, yes, it is. This first miracle is a great revelation of Christ's identity as the God of Israel who provides for his people. And he doesn't just provide a little, but if you do the maths, he gives them over 1,000 bottles worth of wine, and the best wine too. This miracle is one of 3 we celebrate at the Epiphany because it is a public manifestation of God in the flesh. At the same time that Christ is doing something very divine and effortlessly transforming part of his creation into something completely different, he is also being very human. The mystery of the Incarnation is not that Jesus is God or that he is man, but that he is both. There are those who find the idea of Christ changing his mind too extraordinary to accept, or perhaps they find it too ordinary, too human to accept. But just in case we're in any doubt, He does it again later on in St. John's Gospel, when his family asks if he's going to Jerusalem for the Passover. He says no, they leave without him, and then he goes anyway. It wasn't some subtle plan, he wasn't lying. Again, the easiest explanation is that he changed his mind. We have to be very careful to remember always that Christ was both God and man. If we forget that he is God, then we won't believe he actually has any power to save us. But if we forget that he is man, then we still have a problem, since it would seem that God is no more approachable than he was before the incarnation. We end up pushing him away and keeping him at a distance. But God became man precisely to close that gap between us and him. The Son of God became man, like us in all things but sin. And it is not a sin to change your mind. We can sometimes be a bit sloppy when talking about what exactly Christ knew. It's so easy to sort of shrug our shoulders and say, well, of course it was easy for him. He was God. He knew everything. And it is true that as God, he knew everything. But as man, it's not quite so simple. Yes, he had access to that knowledge if he wished to use it, but that's not the same as simply knowing it. If he really knew everything that the Father knows from the moment that he was born, what does it mean for him to become man? That wouldn't give him a normal experience of being human. He had to do the ordinary human things that we do, like learning to speak, to walk, to tie his shoelaces. St. Luke tells us that he increased in wisdom and in stature. If you imagine a childhood where you always won every game you ever played because you knew exactly what your opponents were going to do before they did it, because you knew everything, you wouldn't have anyone to play with for very long. You'd be pretty lonely and miserable. You can't really call that a normal experience of being human. God became man so that we could know that he understands precisely what it's like to be us, because he has been there himself. And that means that Christ grew physically, and it means that he grew in his knowledge. And there was only one person qualified to help him in this, the one person who could help him to discern his hour, the time when he would die to save his people from their sins. That person knew he would have to do this from before he was born, and was the one person who would not stand in his way, because, unlike the rest of humanity, she was untainted by sin or concupiscence. When St. Peter found out that Christ's mission would lead to the cross, he stood in his way and tried to stop him, to which Christ said, "Get behind me, Satan, for the way that you think is not God's, but man's." There was only one person who couldn't let that earthly way of thinking get in the way of our Lord, and that was his mother. And so we see her here doing what mothers do, teaching her child and helping him to grow. And that process was not the serene and boring process that paintings of Christ and his mother might sometimes suggest. They were real human beings with real personalities and even a sense of humor. And among other things, they were able to speak to each other bluntly, as Christ does here, without the risk of either one giving or taking offense. Far from creating problems for us, this gospel passage actually solves them. It proves to us that Christ was a real human being, really able to sympathize with us here and now. And it also reminds us, as if that were not enough, that we have the help of that perfect woman, his mother, who teaches us, who helps us to grow, and who lets him know when we are in need of his help ourselves.
fratres ut meam ac vestrum sacrificium, acceptabile fiat ab Deum Patrem omnipotentem.
Recipiat Deum sacrificium de manibus tuis, ad laudem et gloriam nomini sui, ad utilitatem quoque nostrum, totiusque ecclesia sua sancta.
Concede nobis quesumus Domine, haec digne frequentare mysteria, quia quoties huius hostiae commemoratio celebratur, opus nostre redemptionis exercitur, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Dominus vobiscum. Sursum coda. Gratias agamus Domino Deo nostro. Vere dignum et justum est cum et salutare, nos tibi semper et ubique gratias agere, Domine Sancte Pater, omnipotens aeterne Deus, per Christum Dominum nostrum, qui humanis miseratus erroribus, de Virgine nascit ignatus est, qui crucem passus a perpetua morte nos liberavit, et a mortuis resurgens vitam nobis donavit aeternam, et ideo cum angelis et archangelis, cum tronis et dominationibus, cumque omni militia celestis exercitus, hymnum gloriae Tuae canibus, sine fine dicentes.
Clementissime Pater, per Iesum Christum Filium Tuum Dominum nostrum, suffices rogamus ac petimus, uti accepta habeas, et benedicas, hec dona, hec munera, hec sancta sacrificia illibata. In primisque tibi offerimus pro ecclesia tua sancta catholica, quam pacificare, custodire, adonare, et reggere digneris, toto orbe terrarum. Una cum famelo tuo Papa nostro Francisco, et antistite nostro Bernardo, et omnibus orthodoxis atque catholici et apostolici fidei cultoribus. Memento Domine, famalorumque tuarum. Et omnium circumstantium quorum tibi fides cognita est et nota devotio, pro quibus tibi offerimus, vel qui tibi offerent hoc sacrificium laudis, pro se suisque omnibus, pro redemptione animarum suarum, pro spe salutis et incolumnitatis suae, tibique redunt voto sua aeterno Deo vivo et vero. Communicantes et memoriam venerantes in primis gloriose semper Virginis Mariae, genitricis Dei et Domini nostri Iesu Christi, sed beati Iosef, iustum Virginis sponsi, et beatorum apostolorum ac martyrum tuorum, Petri et Pauli Andrei, Jacobi Ioannis Tome, Jacobi Philippi Bartolomei Mattei Simonis et Tadei, Lini, Pleti, Clementis, Zisti, Cornelii, Cipriani, Lorenzi, Chrysogoni, Ioannis et Pauli, Cosme et Damiani, et omnium sanctorum tuorum, quorum meritis precibusque concedas, ut in omnibus protectionis tuae moniamur auxilio, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Angigitur oblationem servitutis nostre, sed et cuncte familiae tuae quesumus Domine, ut placatus accipias, diesque nostros in tua pace disponas, atque ab aeterna damnatione nos eripi, et in electorum tuorum iubias gregi numerari, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Quam oblationem tu Deus in omnibus quesumus, benedictam ad scriptam ratam, rationabilem acceptabilemque facere dinieris, ut nobis corpus et sanguis fiat delictissimi Filii Tui, Domini nostri, Iesu Christi, qui pridie quam pateretur, accepit panem in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, et elevatis oculis in celum, a Te Deum Patrem suum omnipotentem, tibi gratias agens, benedixit, fregit, dedique discipulis suis dicens, accipite et manducate ex hoc omnes. Hoc est enim corpus meum, quod pro vobis tradetur. Simili modo postquam cenatum est, accipiens et hunc preclarum calicem in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, item tibi gratias agens, benedixit, dedique discipulis suis dicens, accipite et bibite ex eo omnes. Hic est enim calix sanguinis mei, novi et eterni testamenti, qui pro vobis et pro multis effundetur in remissionem peccatorum. Hoc facite in meam commemorationem. Mysterium Fidei. Et memories Domini nos servitui, sed et plebs tua sancta eiustum Christi Filii Tui Domini nostri, tam beate passionis, nec non et ab inferis resurrectionis, sed et in celos gloriose ascensionis, offerimus preclari maestati Tue, de Tuis donis ac datis, ostiam puram, ostiam sanctam, ostiam immaculatam, panem sanctum vitae aeternae, et calicem salutis perpetuae, supraque propitio axa renovultur respicere dinieris, et accepta haberi sicuti accepta haberi dignatus est, munere puri tu iusti Abel, et sacrificium patriarchi nostri Abrahe, et quod tibi obtulit sumus sacerdos tuos Melchizedec, sanctum sacrificium, immaculatum ostiam. Supplices te rogamus omnipotens Deus, iubi hec per fere manus sancti angeli tui, in sublime altari tuum in conspecto divini maestatis tui, ut quod ex hac altaris participatione sacrosanctum Filii Tui corpus et sanguinum sum serimus omni benedictione celesti, et gratia repliamo, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Memento etiam Domine, famalorum tuarum, qui nos precioserunt cum signo fidei, et dormiunt in somno pacis. Ipsis Domine et omnibus in Christo qui escentibus, locum refrigerii, lucis et pacis, ut indulgias deprecam, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Nobis quoque peccatoribus familis tuis, de multitudine miserationem tuarum sperantibus, partem aliquam et societatem donari digneris, cum tuis sanctis apostolis et martiribus, cum Ioanne, Stefano, Mattia, Barnaba, Ignatio, Alexandro, Marcellino, Petro, Felicitate perpetua, Agatha, Lucia, Agnete, Cecilia, Anastasia, et omnibus sanctis tuis, intra coram nos consortium, non estimatur meriti, sed venie quesumus largitur admite, per Christum Dominum nostrum, per quem hic omnia Domine semper bona creas, sanctificas, vivificas, benedicis, et prestas nobis. Per ipsum et cum ipso et in ipso, est tibi Deo Patri omnipotenti, in unitate Spiritus Sancti, omnis honor et gloria, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Preceptis salutaribus moniti, et divina institutione formati, audemus dicere. Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitte nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Libera nos quesumus Domine ab omnibus malis, da propitius pacem in diebus nostris, ut ope misericordiae Tue adiuti, et a peccatosima semper liberi, et ab omni perturbatione securi, expectantes beatam spem, et adventum Salvatoris nostri, Iesu Christi. Domine Iesu Christe, quid existi apostolis tuis, pacem relinqua vobis, pacem meam do vobis, ne respicias peccata nostra, sed fidem ecclesiae Tue, eamque secundum voluntatem Tuam, pacificare et coadunare dinieris, qui vivis et regnas in saecula saeculorum. Pax Domini sit semper vobiscum. Et cum spiritu tuo. Pax Dei.
ecce agnus Dei, ecce qui tollit peccata mundi, beati qui ad cenam agni vocatis. Domine non sum dignus, ut intres effectum meum, sed tam fidic verbo, et sanabit meum. nobis Domine Tue caritatis infunde, ut quos uno celesti pane satiaspi, una facias pietate concordias, per Christum Dominum nostrum,